Pelle Lindbergh's name still echoes through NHL arenas as the ultimate mix of breathtaking talent and sobering tragedy. The 5'9" Swedish goaltender stormed into the Philadelphia Flyers' crease in the early 1980s, earned a Vezina Trophy with lightning-fast reflexes, and ignited dreams of multiple Stanley Cups until a fatal Porsche 930 turbo crash in November 1985 ended it all at just 26. Decades later, Lindbergh's unforgettable saves, groundbreaking European success, and heart-wrenching demise continue to influence goaltending technique, inspire Swedish stars like Henrik Lundqvist, and drive crucial conversations about athlete safety off the ice. Join us as we revisit the legend, the loss, and the lasting legacy of one of hockey's most compelling figures. Philadelphia in the mid-'80s pulses with fluorescent signs over tavern doors, steam rising from manhole covers outside the Spectrum, and newspaper racks shouting about a fearless young netminder who doesn't seem to blink when a puck rockets toward his mask. Joran Per-Erik Pelle Lindbergh, lean and spring-loaded, crosses the ocean from Stockholm, carrying the cool precision of Scandinavian winter, and the fire of a kid who spent every spare minute in front of makeshift goalposts on frozen ponds. Friends remember him at 13, collecting bruises as souvenirs and celebrating each save with a shy half-smile. Coaches remember a teenager calm enough to lower his pulse between whistles, yet aggressive enough to challenge every shooter by a full skate length. By 20, he already owns bronze from the Lake Placid Olympics, earned the hard way in a draw against the American squad that would soon make miracle headlines and knock the Soviet machine off its axis. Scouts in the stands jot the same note in different languages. Reflexes beyond category. The Philadelphia Flyers choose him 35th overall in the 1979 draft, a bolder move than it sounds because European goaltenders are still considered exotic risks. Lindbergh answers with 2 seasons of blue-collar apprenticeship in the American Hockey League, hauling his own gear through bus terminals, living on per diem, and learning the unforgiving angles of smaller North American rinks. Veterans on the Maine Mariners claim they can hear him mumbling Swedish positioning cues under his breath during practice, as if he's programming his muscles to move before the brain sends instructions. By 1982, he is ready for prime time. Opponents meeting him for the first time talk afterward about a glove that flashes like a camera and pads that slam shut before a shooter even finishes the windup. Wins come in clusters, but the 1984-85 season turns into a detonation. 65 appearances, 40 victories, most in the league, plus a goals against mark sparkling, despite the era's free-for-all scoring and aluminum stick slap shots that whistle like artillery. Fans flood parking lots hours before puck drop just to chant his name at the player entrance. Inside, coaches of rival clubs sketch emergency diagrams, highlighting the patch of net above his catching hand. But the moment the game begins, those targets vanish behind a swerving wall of orange and white. When the Flyers rack up 113 points and punch a ticket to the Stanley Cup final, Lindbergh's star status is non-negotiable. The Vezina Trophy, historically stamped with North American hometowns, adds a Swedish surname for the first time, and bar chatter in South Philly starts to sound like Stockholm learned English overnight. Philadelphia is a city that adores its goalies with an almost superstitious intensity. Bernie Parent once reigned as protector of the crease, and now comparisons spill from sports radio callers who insist Lindbergh is the heir. He walks through Rittenhouse Square, and strangers greet him like extended family. He signs menus in Little Italy and gets free cannoli in return. Reporters push microphones at his face looking for bravado, but the answers stay measured, almost understated, delivered in a soft voice that belies the strobe light, saves replayed on highlight shows after the late news. Yet the 80s nurture a nightlife culture that doesn't believe in speed limits or cautionary tales. Teams finish a big win, trade their skates for loafers, and follow neon arrows to clubs where music pounds through the floor. Personal nutritionists and sober ride apps don't exist, and a high-performance sports car is the accessory of choice. Lindbergh purchases a Porsche 930 Turbo, a machine built for race circuits and nicknamed the Widowmaker due to its unforgiving rear-engine torque. Teammates admire the slate-gray blur that screams out of the practice facility lot. Mechanics whisper warnings about how quickly the tail can snap if adrenaline outruns physics. On November 10th, 1985, the Flyers wrap another victory and drift to J.D. McGillicuddy's, a haunt so close to the rink that skates could practically make the trip. Players raise glasses, trade in-game war stories, and let the clock slip toward dawn. Around 12:30, Lindbergh climbs behind the wheel. Passengers Edward Parvin and Kathy McNeil buckle in, and the turbocharger spools toward the early morning silence of suburban New Jersey. At 5:41 a.m., the Porsche misses a curve outside an elementary school in Summerdale. Impact registers at roughly 90 miles an hour. The brick wall wins the collision. Responders find the speedometer frozen, the driver unresponsive, blood alcohol concentration more than double New Jersey's limit. Inside the wreckage, 2 lives cling to threads. The goaltender at the center of Philadelphia's dreams lies motionless. Doctors at Kennedy Hospital fight for hours, but by the morning of November 11th, neurologists confirm brain death. Lindbergh's parents, hearts splitting under the weight of reality, authorize the donation of every viable organ. Newspapers printing the obituary pause mid-type to include a sidebar on the lives those gifts will save. In a single gesture, a family transforms unbearable loss into uncountable second chances, and the city begins to grapple with the contradiction of heroism ending in tragedy, yet extending through generosity. Flyers practice that day turns into a vigil. Helmets line the boards, sticks tap once against the ice in lieu of words, and number 31's locker stalls in reverent stillness. 4 evenings later, the Spectrum sells out for a memorial before the puck drops against Edmonton. Arena lights dim, except for a single beam illuminating Lindbergh's mask resting atop the crease. The public address announcer lets a full half-minute of silence pass before a spontaneous roar swells from the rafters, a chant repeating his nickname like a heartbeat. Then the game begins, and rookie call-up Darren Jensen, still shaking with nerves, fends off 29 shots from the reigning champions. Flyers win 5-3, and the scoreboard reads like a love letter to the teammate they just lost. The regular season eventually winds down with 110 points, evidence of collective resilience. But inside the organization, everyone knows a corridor has grown longer and darker without its Swedish sentinel. No official retirement ceremony ever freezes number 31, yet decades pass without a single goalie volunteering to wear it. The jersey functions as a silent monument, hanging in memory even when it isn't physically in the rafters. Players still touch a small plaque that reads, "Fly, Pelle, fly," on their way out of the dressing room. Equipment managers keep a replica mask in a private equipment closet, polished and untouched except on the anniversary of the crash. In Sweden, the ripple effect extends far beyond tribute decals. Kids studying under dim floodlights at local rinks copy Lindbergh's compact stance and forward depth. Tommy Salo watches videotapes until the VHS ribbon stretches. Henrik Lundqvist practices the aggressive high starting position that became Lindbergh's trademark. Television analysts 2 generations later break down modern saves and trace footwork lineage back to a posture first televised from the Spectrum. Meanwhile, the National Hockey League makes incremental but important changes. Team handbooks begin emphasizing safe ride programs. Front offices hire specialists to counsel young stars on finances, nutrition, and nightlife pitfalls. The league's eventual substance abuse and behavioral health initiative cites mid-'80s tragedies as catalytic. Players soon receive a wallet card with 24-hour driver hotlines, a direct descendant of an accident that proves skill alone cannot outskate danger. Debates never fully settle. Engine oversteer, alcohol, bravado, youthful invincibility. Each theory surfaces in new articles every November. Some blame a permissive party culture that romanticized speed. Others frame the crash as a tragic singularity. Friends of Lindbergh often defend his character, while conceding the decision chain that night was fatally flawed. Philly Talk shows still field calls from fans who believe a sober ride home would have rewritten NHL record books, delivered a Stanley Cup parade up Broad Street, and maybe rewritten goaltending history books alongside Patrick Roy and Martin Brodeur. Memory keeps a dual archive, the highlight reel where Lindbergh stonewalls Wayne Gretzky with a stacked pad robbery, and the grim news footage of a crumpled Porsche under emergency lights. The first clip pulses with the possibility of invincibility. The second confirms mortality in the starkest terms. Together, they frame a cautionary tale potent enough to transcend hockey. Musicians reference him in lyrics about fleeting glory. Driver education speakers invoke him when addressing high school athletes. Biomedical organizations credit him for a surge in '80s organ donor registrations. When modern Flyers goalies step into the crease and look up at the rafters, they know the weight of history hovers as insistently as a defenseman screening the shot. Each save draws applause partly born from nostalgia for the Swede who once rendered impossible saves routine. Pre-game hype videos flicker between current highlights and grainy footage of Lindbergh's white mask framed by orange jerseys. The sequence ending on a freeze frame of his eyes, focused, determined, almost prophetic. Opposing players still talk about the Lindbergh factor, though now the phrase refers to an intangible aura rather than a tactical challenge. Visiting rookies learn the story on the team bus, fall quiet for a moment, then carry the lesson into their own nights off the ice. Coaches across the league slip reminders about designated drivers into pre-game talks, knowing one example engraved in hockey lore speaks louder than any slideshow. Organ recipients, anonymous by privacy law, occasionally send letters to the Lindbergh family that filter back to Philadelphia volunteers who shield personal details but share the essence. A stranger wakes up to a new organ and whispers thank you to a hockey player they never met. These private testimonies stretch the meaning of Lindbergh's impact far beyond sports pages, into hospital corridors and family dining rooms where second chances breathe and grow. Years pile up, but the timeline still bends around 1985. Technology upgrades broadcasts, rinks replace boards, the Flyers change arenas. Yet the crash date remains a landmark. Anniversaries trigger tributes on social media. Fans post photographs of vintage Spectrum ticket stubs beside miniature goalie masks. Some carve the number 31 into pumpkin displays every Halloween as an inside community ritual. Others light candles on November 10th and lay them at a statue of Ed Snyder, the Flyers' late founder, who once called Lindbergh our comet. The question, how great could he have become, never reaches closure. Statistical models attempt to project wins based on early career curves and suggest he might have approached 400 victories. Analysts imagine him teaching while still playing, bridging European positional philosophy with North American scramble instincts, altering goaltending's evolutionary path. A certain generation of diehard Flyers fans doesn't need projections. To them, he already ranks among the elite because potential counts in the Hart's accounting just as much as achievements. Highlight montages keep circulating, untouched by algorithm fatigue. A sprawling glove save against Boston fades into a toe drag kick stop versus Montreal. Each clip slowed just enough for a viewer to register the improbable body control. Songs from the '80s pump beneath the footage, sometimes a synth line, sometimes hard rock, linking the era's audio fingerprint with the swirl of snow kicked up by sudden lateral pushes. Audiences discovering the NHL through digital platforms comment that the saves look modern, unaware that the film grain hides tape splices from 40 seasons ago. Philadelphia's skyline changes, but inside bars along South Street, chalkboards still list a cocktail called the Pelle, orange liqueur for the Flyers kit, Swedish vodka for obvious reasons, and a dash of bitters for the ending no one wanted. Patrons raise the glass in quiet toast before games, acknowledging an eternal presence that hovers like condensation on the glass above a rink. Stories this layered rarely close with clean-cut morals. Lindbergh's life teaches perseverance, cross-cultural ambition, and technical mastery under pressure. His death warns about the razor-thin margin between celebration and catastrophe. The lesson refuses simplification, which may be why it resonates across generations. Every new highlight of a blazing hot goalie now triggers a reflexive footnote. Honor the brilliance, protect the person. In Philadelphia, the chant used during the memorial, Pelle, Pelle, occasionally surfaces when a modern Flyer stands on his head during a penalty kill. The syllables echo less for comparison than for continuity, bridging past and present, reminding an arena packed with LED screens and smartphone lights that its heritage includes both ecstatic triumphs and devastating losses. Hockey seasons proceed, unpredictable and relentless. But beneath the fresh coat of ice, there is always a faint outline of a number 31 crease, preserved like a fossil of hope. Lindbergh's story closes with neither championship parade nor Hall of Fame induction, yet his influence threads itself through every clean-shaven crease, every controlled rebound, each disciplined decision to hand car keys to someone sober. Greatness, it turns out, can thrive long after the athlete is gone, provided fans, players, and entire communities decide to carry the torch. Philadelphia carries it, Sweden carries it, anyone who loves hockey enough to respect its dangers carries it. And so, without fanfare, the Swedish son of Philadelphia keeps making his most important save, catching the conscience of the sport before it slides wide of the net.